Lurka, hi. Why do you need me so urgently? Couldn't you tell over the phone? Taking off her jacket, Oksana asked when she entered the apartment. Not a phone conversation. Come into the kitchen. Lara turned off the light in the hallway and followed her friend. Intrigued. Tell me already. Oksana sat down at the table and folded her hands in front of her, like an exemplary student waiting for an explanation. Lara put an open bottle of red wine and 2 glasses on the table. Wow. Such a serious conversation? I'm all attention, Oksana said. Lara poured wine into glasses and sat down opposite her friend. For relaxation and mutual understanding, she said pathetically, raised her glass and drank from it. Oksana also raised her glass, but she was in no hurry to drink, waiting for her friend to start telling. I'm lost. I fell in love so much that I lost my head. I live like in a dream, raving about them. I'd go to bed and hurry the night. The morning would come sooner. I didn't think it would happen that way. I loved Pavel too, but not like that. And here. Lara finished her wine in one fell swoop. I'm sorry. Is that why you called me? To share the news? Oksana put down her glass and got up from the table. Sit down. Lara pulled her by the hand, sitting her down. What about Pavel? Oksana asked, falling into a chair. And what about Pavel? We've been together for 7 years. We have everything exactly well, and I met Oleg and disappeared, Lara sighed. Are you judging? Have you ever loved like this? No, so don't judge, Lara said suddenly sharply. I called you just to talk about Pavel. I think I'll have a drink. Oksana took a few sips, nodded approvingly, looking at the glass. You were in love with my husband. Do you think I haven't noticed how you look at him? Lara tapped her nails on the tabletop. She kept beating around the bush, not knowing how to start talking about the main thing. Don't talk nonsense, Oksana snorted. Lara shrugged her shoulders. I'm not jealous, don't think. It's even better. I decided to leave Pavel, but I don't dare to tell him the truth. I feel sorry for him. When I changed, I didn't regret it, but is it a pity to say? It's not logical, don't you think? Oksana took a sip from her glass. What do you know? He's good. I yell at him, I break down. I've exhausted all his nerves, but he's silent. Guesses and is silent. He doesn't deserve to be treated like this. Do you understand? No. Explain, Oksana asked. Lara poured more wine into her glass. I can tell him straight out that I don't love him, I'm leaving, I'm sorry. He will let go. But what will happen to him? Men feel hard when they are abandoned. Their self-esteem drops a lot. They'll drink it down, go down, maybe do something even worse. I can't do that to him. Do you understand now? What do I have to do with it? Lara rolled her eyes at her friend's stupidity. You like him. Maybe you even love him with unrequited love. Lara looked at Oksana carefully. She looked away. I would be calm for him if you were next to him and not some. Ah, I think I understand. Do you want me to take care of Pavel while you're tumbling with your lover? You're definitely crazy. Is he a thing? I lived, I got tired, I gave it to my friend. Oksana wrote out the wine in one gulp, grimaced, wiped her mouth with her palm. Thank you, friend, for the compliment. I didn't know I was better than some slut. No, this is nonsense. Find someone else to put your husband with. Did you ask him? Does he want to be with me? Oksana nervously twirled an empty glass in her fingers for a thin leg. And it depends on you. Lara leaned towards her across the table. No, you're definitely out of your mind. You need to be treated. Oksana even blushed with indignation. Unfortunately, there is no cure for love, and I lost my head, that's right. Lara said condescendingly. And if it doesn't work out there with this love of yours, what then? Do you want to bring Pavel back? Like a friend used it, tell me thank you for your kindness and bring your husband back, right? Oksana was getting more and more annoyed. I can't think about anything, look ahead. I only know one thing, I will die without him, said Lara, leaning back in her chair. She clearly didn't like the turn the conversation was taking. Oksana said nothing. What can I say? They drank. Oksana couldn't believe what Lara had come up with. But on the other hand, why should someone else get Paul and not her? After all, she really cares about him. Help me. Just be there for him, distract him, put him to bed if you want. Should I teach you? Lara looked past Oksana with an unseeing gaze. That's crazy. We sit, drink, and the wife offers her friend to sleep with her husband. Have you seen enough TV shows? It resembles Ostrovsky's Penniless. Do you remember how it ended there? So don't get you to anyone. Shot, silent scene. How could you think of such a thing? Don't scream. Lara pressed her fingers to her temples. I just suggested it. If you don't want to, don't. Let him sniff. Lara raised the glass to her lips, closed her eyes. Oksana watched with fascination as she swallowed the wine, as the vein in the dimple between her collarbones pulsated, and could not take her eyes off. I just want him not to suffer, but to be happy, just like me. If it didn't work out together, then at least separately we will be happy. I want him to be in good hands. In your hands, Lara said, putting an empty glass on the table. What are you arguing about, girls? Not about me, I hope. You're drinking? Pavel's voice rang out. The friends looked around at once. Pavel was standing in the kitchen doorway smiling. Finally. Undress my hands, we'll have dinner. We were discussing the movie here. Lara said as if nothing had happened, got up, went to the stove and lit the gas under the pan. Soon Pavel returned from the bathroom. And a glass for me? I asked, sitting down at the table in Lara's place. You'll have a drink later. Will you take Oksana home? It's getting late. At these words, Lara looked expressively at Oksana. Yes, I'll call a taxi. Oksana hurriedly said, not understanding the speaking look of her friend. Don't need a taxi. I'll take you, Pavel said, without taking his eyes off the plate of meat and potatoes that Lara was putting in front of him. Let's go out, we need to say something. Lara called Oksana into the room with a glance and a nod of her head. When they were alone, Lara grabbed her friend's arm above the elbow, pressed her to herself and whispered in her ear, now everything depends on you. When he takes you home, don't get lost, call him to you. Tell me if something is broken, ask me to look, come up with it yourself, and don't get lost there. When he changes himself, my betrayal will not seem so unbearably terrible to him. Oksana looked at her friend, her eyes wide. Do you want me to become an accomplice to your betrayal? Deceived Pavel? I won't do it. It's not fair, Oksana insisted. Okay. If you don't want to, don't sleep with him, my honest. Lara pushed her friend's hand away. Asterisk. Oksana was driving with Pavel in a car through the deserted streets of the city. I'm sorry you had to drive me instead of resting. She broke the awkward silence. Come on. I'll have time to rest. Why are you drunk? The clerk has become secretive. You won't get a word. Is she in trouble? She hasn't been herself lately. Then he growls for no reason. Then he laughs until he hiccups. Then he cries because of little things. I can't believe she didn't tell you anything. Pavel glanced briefly at Oksana. We were just gossiping about our own, about women's, she replied. Oh, women's gossip. You don't know how to lie. And I'm not blind or deaf. Oksana shifted in her seat. Listen, wouldn't it be a big impertinence if I asked you to look at the faucet in the kitchen? Dripping. I'm afraid I'll flood the neighbors, Oksana said to divert the conversation from the slippery topic. Now? Pavel paused. Okay, I'll take a look. He nodded in agreement, thinking about something. They drove up to Oksana's house and took the elevator up to her floor, trying not to look at each other. Well, what do you have? Show me, Pavel said, taking off his shoes in the hallway. In the kitchen, Lara went to show. It's dripping from below. She opened the doors of the cabinet under the sink. Pavel pushed her aside, looked under the sink. Everything seems to be dry. Yes. And last night I even substituted a dish. Oksana's face flushed with shame. Well, Lurka, is there any tool? Pavel looked back at her. Oksana went out, but soon returned with a small suitcase. Here, from my father remained. Great. Pavel opened the suitcase and began rummaging through the tools. Oksana went into the room, scolding the clerk. 15 minutes later, Pavel came and said that the faucet needed to be changed. The gaskets are all gone, and the crane is ancient. It's better to buy a new one. He didn't say anything new. Oksana already knew that. I called a locksmith for 6 months. So that's it. Tomorrow I will buy everything myself, take my tool, come in the evening and install a faucet. Maybe some tea? Oksana jumped up from the sofa, glad that Pavel had not caught her in a lie. Yes, no, we have to go. It's getting late. They were standing opposite each other. Just hold out your hand. Why did she marry him to herself at all? Oksana was thinking about Lara. I could never have cheated on him. How my heart is pounding. She involuntarily pressed her palm to her chest, as if she wanted to calm her agitated heart. How I like him. We were never alone with him. Doesn't he feel anything? Doesn't he notice? Pavel noticed the excitement, the desperate struggle in Oksana's eyes. And she's cute and funny, worried. And how does he look? Is Lurka right, and is she in love with me? Some unknown force pushed them. They simultaneously took a step towards each other, their lips met. And immediately both recoiled, as if they were burned. Both felt awkward from their impulse. You offered tea, Pavel said hoarsely. Oksana rushed to the kitchen, to the stove, turned on the gas with trembling fingers, put the kettle on the hob. She began to put cups and a sugar bowl on the table, feeling his gaze on her with every cell. I remembered something, reached into the closet and put a plate of pies on the table. Pavel watched her from the doorway, then he sat down at the table and took a pie. Did you buy it at the cookery? He asked and took a big bite. He immediately mumbled approvingly, closing his eyes with pleasure. I baked it myself, Oksana said resentfully. And Pavel was already reaching for the next pie. Yes? And for whom? You seem to live alone. He saw Oksana's face flush. I'm sorry, I blurted out. Yes, we celebrated a colleague's anniversary at work today. They brought what they could. I baked pies. I kept some for myself. Delicious? Very much. Mom baked these. And Lurka can't. In cooking, he buys. Can I have more? Pavel reached for the next pie. Eat everything. Pleased, Oksana poured tea into a cup, added boiling water and put the cup in front of Pavel. Why aren't you eating? Pavel asked, not bringing the cup to his mouth. I don't want to. Oksana sat down at the table opposite Pavel. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. It was a short June night outside the window. Over the roofs of the houses, either the last glimmer of sunset was fading, or the dawn was lighting up with a thin strip. The city froze in anticipation of the morning. They were lying on the sofa, covered with a blanket. Why don't you and Larry have children? Oksana suddenly asked. At first they didn't want to, and then, Lurka had an abortion before meeting me. She can't have children. You can take a child from an orphanage. Oksana even lifted her head from the pillow to get a better look at Pavel's face in the rarefied darkness of the room. Lara doesn't want to. He says he won't be able to love someone else's child, but I think she's just afraid. Do you want me to give birth to your son or daughter? Or two at once? Oksana asked cautiously, laying her head on the pillow and holding her breath. Pavel turned to her in surprise. His lips touched Oksana's ear. I want to, he whispered softly. Lurka has a lover. For some reason, Oksana also whispered. I guessed. I know now, Pavel answered in a whisper. He fell asleep, and Oksana never closed her eyes. When it was quite light, she got out from under the covers, put on a bathrobe and went to the kitchen to cook breakfast. The table was already set when Pavel entered the kitchen. Seeing warm, ruddy cheesecakes and steaming coffee, he gave Oksana a grateful smile. Mom always set the table like that. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Will you come home? Oksana asked as indifferently as possible when Pavel drove her to work. I won't have time. Oksana, don't. I myself, she interrupted him. Yes, no. I'll buy a crane after work, grab my tools and come. To you, he added. I'll be waiting. Oksana nodded, and her heart beat joyfully in her chest. A month later, she informed Pavel that she was pregnant. He circled her around the room, kissed her, and she cried with happiness, forgetting that he was still married. I have already filed for divorce. The trial is in 2 weeks. And who will be, a boy or a girl? He asked, looking into Oksana's eyes. I don't know yet. It's still early, she laughed happily. 2 months later they got married. We just signed, sat together in a cafe. Pavel carried Oksana home in his arms. When she was 9 months pregnant, Lara came to them. He left me. The obsession has passed. I do not know what to do, she said from the doorway. And you are well done, you have already managed. Lara nodded at her friend's round protruding stomach. Is Pavel happy? Insanely. Oksana smiled happily. He'll be here soon. She suddenly looked at Leroux in fright. I knew that sooner or later you would come. Don't be afraid, Lara grinned. I've done a lot of things. There was a husband, a family, and I destroyed everything. I chased after a ghostly happiness. Did I right to say that they are not looking for love from love? You just hold on, we're close. Oksana hugged her friend. The key rattled in the lock, and Lara freed herself from Oksana's hands. Pavel came in, frowned at Lara, smiled at Oksana, came up and kissed her on the temple, on the border of the hair above her ear. She closed her eyes. Lara turned away from someone else's happiness. How are you? Pavel asked her. Lara has changed. She seemed to have faded, haggard. Don't be sorry, she waved away. Let's go to dinner. I have everything ready, Oksana said, trying to defuse the situation. I'll go. Lara winced slightly. Have dinner with us. Then Pavel will take you home. Oksana stopped her. Lara looked up at Pavel, then shifted her gaze to Oksana. Aren't you afraid? No, I'm not afraid, Oksana said confidently. I'll go. Lara opened the door. Oksana was putting plates and cutlery on the table when the pain took her breath away. She bent over, pressed her hands to her stomach. An ambulance? Pavel asked anxiously. No, it's still early. It's gone, she said, straightening up. But the next attack made her moan. When the ambulance took them to the hospital, Lara was standing at the entrance and looked after the car. Already at midnight, Pavel called her and happily shouted into the phone that Oksana had given birth to a son. Son, can you imagine? No, Lara replied coldly. Zavra, I'm going to buy a stroller. So much is needed, can you help me? Pavel asked more calmly. Of course, Lara started up. They bought so much that they barely closed the trunk. Lara cheerfully listed what else she needed, but it's tomorrow. Today she has no more strength. Will you come in? Lara asked when they drove up to her house. I gave you to her myself, with my own hands, and she didn't disdain, she took it. I know. She told me everything right away. I'm so happy. He left, and Lara stood for a long time at the entrance, looking at the darkening sky, feeling the same bottomless emptiness inside herself.